We're here at West Point at the 60th reunion of the class of 1959, a class full of heroes, men who exemplified duty, honor, country, and character. At a center conceived by and named in honor of Fred Malek, a member of the class of 1959. Fred Malek exemplified the leadership values like few others from West Point or from any other institution. Center looks up the Hudson towards where the chain was stretched decades ago. The mighty Hudson.
We citizens are deeply grateful and appreciative of your courage.
Know your numbers. What are you doing?
During the Revolution, George Washington calls West Point the most important post in America. Here, patriots stretch a great chain across the Hudson River to stop the British fleet from dividing the nation. The post is the key to America's defenses. In 1802, Thomas Jefferson gives West Point a new mission. He orders the nation's first military academy be founded here, a place to train the next generation of American officers. The first class graduates just 2 students, but the spark has struck. A new chain begun. The first link in the long gray line is forged at West Point. The early academy focuses on training engineers, which the Army desperately needs. And as the needs of the nation grow, so grows West Point to meet them. In 1817, Superintendent Sylvanus Thayer transforms the academy. He raises academic standards. He establishes a strict code of conduct. He stresses the values of duty, honor, and country. West Point rapidly becomes a world-class institution. Thayer's cadets soon prove their worth. In the Mexican War, West Point graduates fill the ranks and guide the Army to victory. In the Civil War, they lead both the blue and the gray. In modern wars, the supreme commanders of America's armies began their careers in the Corps of Cadets. Out of uniform, West Pointers have been at the forefront of growth and innovation, engineering the railroads and the Panama Canal. As business leaders, doctors, lawyers, and politicians, West Point graduates have served with distinction in communities, the Oval Office, and on the moon. Over 200 years of tradition and wisdom passed down to each new cadet who falls in, shoulder to shoulder, with the long gray line of officers who came before.
Lock and load!
We put them through a crucible experience.
The entirety of West Point is a leadership lab for cadets.
It's not what you say so much as a leader, it's what you do.
Today, cadets come from every state and every background. From the moment they arrive, every class, every activity has a purpose. 47 months from cadet to officer. 47 months to become worthy of the uniform.
West Point develops a core of officers, leaders of character who are going to serve the Army and the nation, not just while they're in the Army, but throughout their lifetime.
When it opened, West Point used just 4 textbooks. Today, cadets require a far broader base of knowledge, exploring the sciences, liberal arts, computer engineering, and even psychology.
It helps develop in young people a foundation to understand society, because what they're going to do out there is lead and serve people.
Classes are small and often led by Army officers who bring lessons straight from the battlefield to the classroom.
Well, what the faculty are able to do is then put that in perspective, whether it's philosophy, physics, nuclear engineering. How is that then used in the Army when they graduate?
Superintendent Douglas MacArthur believed athletic competition prepared cadets for the rigors of combat. He made it mandatory for all cadets in 1922.
Competitive sports provides that surrogate opportunity, somewhat similar to ground combat, where you can work together as a team toward a common goal against an opponent.
West Point continuously challenges its cadets, their strength and stamina, their mental toughness, their will to overcome any obstacle.
There's kryptonite for everyone at West Point. Those types of activities develop not only the physical skills, but also the comfort with being in uncomfortable situations.
To lead troops, cadets must learn that there is more to command than giving orders. West Point teaches cadets the skills to build a cohesive team and the tactics to lead it to victory.
1, 2, 3, go!
We try to give them a snapshot of what it feels like when a military formation is given a mission to accomplish and a time limitation. They have to plan for it and they have to execute that mission just like soldiers in our Army have to accomplish.
As the world becomes more complex, cadets are trained for uncertainty, learning to adapt and lead in any situation. Dwight Eisenhower once reflected that the thing that sets West Point apart is not that it has an honor code, but that the honor code actually works.
Character to me is the essence of who you are. It's how you make decisions. It's how you treat other people. Can you build a team? Do people trust you? In our profession, trust is everything. When no one's looking, when it's the middle of the night, when they're tired, cold, wet, and hungry, they know right from wrong, and they have the moral courage to choose the harder right.
What is human rights to you?
Teaching cadets ethics is as essential as training them in marksmanship. They are asked to model real-world ethical problems.
I feel like our history is a direct reflection of our moral judgment as a nation.
The topics are so controversial and hard to wrestle with that we want them to walk out of this training not having all the answers, but to continue to have a discussion with each other on their path to becoming an officer.
I think that makes sense.
At West Point, cadets discover that they are more than students. They are the inheritors of a hallowed tradition. Surrounded by memorials to past heroes, cadets are driven to be great, but ever selfless. Here they learn the truth once spoken by General George Patton, that the badge of rank on their uniform is just a symbol of service to their troops.
I try to reemphasize it every day. It's not about you. It's all about the organization. It's about the people that you're serving with to your left and right. And if people see that you genuinely care about them, they will give you the shirt off their back.
One of the things I hear at West Point a lot from people that didn't graduate from this institution is they see West Point as the wellspring of our profession. It is the source of our Army ethic.
Informed by its past, but with eyes to the future, West Point continues to fulfill the mission it was given in 1802, to forge leaders of character. With each new cadet, the long gray line grows longer, each new link stronger than the last.
So there's your superintendent, Garrison H. Davidson. He was your soup. He loved you guys.
One.
So this is your soup, Gar Davidson. From 56 to 60, he was the superintendent of the military academy. He was your guy. He loved you particularly. Class of 59. And through the whole of his career, it was all about leadership, courage. He was Patton's engineer in World War II. He was at the invasion of North Africa, the invasion of Sicily, the invasion of southern France. He liberated Dachau prison camp. He presided over the first war crimes trial. He was gone for 4 years. And when he came back, he then went to Korea, in the dark days of Korea when UN troops were pushed down into the foothold of the Pusan perimeter. And he had to, MacArthur called Dad and asked him to come over and create the first defensive perimeter at the Pusan perimeter so that we could survive and not get pushed into the ocean. He led a breakout that captured 3,000 of the enemy, then took off his engineer hat and put on his military hat, his helmet, and took the 24th Division to the Yalu River until the Chinese came in and almost wiped them out. Then he came back and became your superintendent. He changed the curriculum for the first time in the history of West Point. Never done before. MacArthur had tried in the 1920s, and the academic board overrode those changes, but Gar Davidson changed it. And now there are those who consider him one of the greatest superintendents in the history of West Point. After being at West Point, he then went to Europe and was the commanding general of the 7th Army when we thought World War III might be going off, and the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. And we thought World War III was about to happen. And he was there on the front lines then too. So your superintendent was one of the greatest heroes in the history of West Point, in the history of the military. He was close friends with Eisenhower and MacArthur. He idolized General Patton. And when the war was over, Patton said, nobody can go home until everybody's written their after-action report. And he said, sir, I've been gone for 4 years. I have my report written. I want to go home now. And he said, you can go home on one condition. You take my dog with you, because I can't get him out of here. And so they agreed to that. And the next day, Patton was in the accident, which eventually killed him when his Jeep was hit by a runaway cart. And so he idolized Patton and the things that Patton stood for. So your superintendent was one of the most prolific and historic military figures of the 20th century. Thank you for all your courage, for the fights you have given to the country, for the leaders that you've produced, for the people that you've lost in battle. You are the heroes of the country. You're probably too close to it to know how important you are, how important West Point is, what you mean to the country, but you are everything, even more now. So God bless you. God bless your service to the country. God bless America, and God bless West Point.
Duty, honor, country. Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
When you are asked by a President of the United States or by any other American what you are doing for your country, no man's answer will be clearer than your own. And that moral motivation which brought you here in the first place is part of your training here as well. West Point was not built to produce technical experts alone. It was built to produce men committed to the defense of their country. Leaders of men who understand the great stakes which are involved. Leaders who can be entrusted with the heavy responsibility which modern weapons and the fight for freedom entail. Leaders who can inspire in their men the same sense of obligation to duty which you bring to it.
Duty, honor, country, duty, the mission, truce, selfless professional service, a career of service, a lifetime of service, honor. Your word is your bond. Truth, honesty, and character are your watchwords, never to be forgotten. Country, your oath to the country rests on our Constitution, which rests on the will of the American people. Our Army is truly a people's army. This simple code is not something West Point gives to you. It is something that West Point helps you give to yourselves.
I know that you've learned the principles of leadership here in this historic place. You know that it requires one to command respect of those who follow by deserving that respect, by dedication and total commitment to the defense of our country and all that it represents. You're part of a great tradition. You are a prime ingredient that keeps us free, that protects all we cherish and hold dear.
From the birth of our existence, America has had a faith in the future. A belief that where we're going is better than where we've been, even when the path ahead is uncertain. To fulfill that promise, generations of Americans have built upon the foundation of our forefathers, finding opportunity, fighting injustice, forging a more perfect union. Our achievement would not be possible without a long gray line that is sacrificed for duty, for honor, for country.
In every corner of America, the words West Point command immediate respect. This place where the Hudson River bends is more than a fine institution of learning. The United States Military Academy is the guardian of values that have shaped the soldiers who have shaped the history of the world. With all in the United States Army, you will stand between your fellow citizens and grave danger. You will help establish a peace that allows millions around the world to live in liberty and to grow in prosperity. You will face times of calm and times of crisis. In every test, you find you prepared because you're the men and women of West Point.
It is said here at West Point that much of the history you teach was made by the people you taught. That's true and very much to your credit. The work you and your predecessors have carried forward since 1802 is truly that of nation building. And today your nation thanks you once again. You have stepped forward not only to serve but to lead. For the hallmark of West Point has been its tradition of growing leaders of character.
This institution has been producing our nation's military leaders for more than 200 years. It has done so during times of peace and in times of war. It has always done so with skill and distinction. We are facing military challenges today unlike any in the past. Our nation will rely on you young military leaders to do as you have done in the past, to defend our nation here and abroad, to conduct yourselves honorably with or without specific guidelines, and to enable our nation to survive in some of the most challenging times we have faced. Our military personnel have had to become more than soldiers. They are now our diplomats, our peacekeepers, our nation builders as well. There's much to do and no blueprints for doing it. We citizens are deeply grateful and appreciative of your courage and your dedication. Without you, we would not long survive.
Duty, honor, country. Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
Country, duty, the mission, troops, selfless professional service, a career of service, a lifetime of service, honor. Your word is your bond. Truth, honesty, and character are your watchwords, never to be forgotten. Country, your oath to the country rests on.
The true heroes.
It is said here at West Point that much of the history you teach was made by the people you taught. That's true and very much to your credit. The work you and your predecessors have carried forward since 1892 is truly that of nation building. And today your nation country must be.
and many, many more who gave their lives for the country.
Ever looking like that, and that's the first president that. I mean.
So there's a little show, starts at 5.
It's 5 to 3. 3 o'clock. We have 5 minutes walk at girls.
O'clock, 2-hour tour is loading now.
bird's eye view of the campus at West Point. And as you can see, the main part of the campus is where the cadets live, study, and parade. In the center of the campus is the parade field. That's where the cadets practice and drill and put on the parade at the various time of the year. And immediately at the backdrop of the parade field is the Washington Hall. This is where the cadets have their 3 meals a day, 4,400 of them served all at the same time.
And above that is the new quarters up by the chapel.
Yes, the newest barracks is Davis Barracks. This is named after the first African American general.
And are there any other new buildings here? I guess the library is relatively new.
It is Jefferson Hall. If you get a chance to come and visit, go to the top floor of Jefferson Hall to the balcony that overlooks the Hudson River, the parade field, the superintendent's house. It's a $1 million view.
Right. Are they?
Duty, honor, country. At the United States Military Academy, these words constitute a way of life. For 100 years, Army football has played a contributing role to the unique spirit of West Point. Along the way, their story has evolved into legend. No less in importance than the hallowed images of MacArthur, Eisenhower, and Patton is the monument to military leadership that sits high above the plain. It is a monument called Michie Stadium. Indeed, the role of Army football became so important within the American military establishment that when Gar Davidson became the head coach in 1933, he found himself answering to the then Chief of Staff, Douglas MacArthur.
I was told that I was to either call or write to General MacArthur at the same time and mail him a letter in the Monday mail, telling him what had happened, who'd gotten hurt, why I thought we'd won, why I thought we'd lost, and so on. And that's the routine I had to follow as long as General MacArthur was Chief of Staff.
When it came to the dual threat of passing and running, few college players of their time equaled the exploits of Monk Meyer, the versatile, though somewhat impoverished-looking single-wing quarterback.
He was not a very prepossessing football prospect. Monk we couldn't see well. How the hell he got into the academy, I don't know. But he was bound and determined that he was going to be a regular football player.
Number 66 was anything but regular, something the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame discovered in 1935. When Meyer's touchdown pass late in the game enabled the Army to pull out a tie in another dramatic confrontation in that storied rivalry.
After the game, Elmer Layden, the coach, with the whole Notre Dame team, came knocking at the door, and I was sitting on this trunk right by the entrance, and they said to me, "Hey, kid, we want to talk to Monk Meyer." And I said, "I'm Monk Meyer with my thick glasses." They said, "No, kid, we're not fooling around. We want to talk to Monk Meyer." Well, I got some people to certify for me, and they said, "Gee whiz." They had come in to congratulate me for my play.
Monk Meyer finished second in the Heisman Award balloting for 1936. In 1958, Pete Dawkins emerged as another Heisman hero. But it was his teammate, number 87, Bill Carpenter, who created one of the most famous legends in Army football lore as the unique Lonely End. Lining up in his innovative lonely outpost away from the huddle, Carpenter fooled many opponents. Army went undefeated, and the Lonely End was voted All-American. Seven years later, the boy who inspired the cadets on the football field became the man leading a combat company in the jungles of Vietnam. On June 9th, 1966, in the province of Kon Tum, Captain Bill Carpenter was in charge of a company of paratroopers in a search and destroy mission when his forces were ambushed by elements of the North Vietnamese army.
We're in the process of crossing, receiving.
Despite being overwhelmed in numbers, Carpenter was hesitant to call for an all-out retreat.
Out of a total force of just a little bit less than 100, I had about 20 or 30 that were wounded. Now, my thoughts were, most of my thoughts and my actions were predicated on taking care of those kids and making sure that when I left with them. Had I not had that, I could have turned around and walked out, 10 minutes into the battle. But I had some kids there that I wasn't going to leave behind.
As the situation worsened, it was apparent that a supportive airstrike was needed. But with the enemy hugging close to Carpenter's position, the question was where to drop the napalm.
There are thousands of North Vietnamese in the posture where they can overrun the rest of his company, and so suddenly he says, no, put the strike right on us, right here. And he had his radio operator throw a smoke grenade to indicate where to put it, which is right where Carpenter was himself. What am I saying? I'm saying he was at the center of the eye of the hurricane, that when he asked for the fire right on his company, he was meaning right on himself personally.
After the napalm hit, there was at least 20 minutes that you could hear a pin drop. That gave us time to reorganize, take care of the wounded. You must remember, we started out at about 87 men, and we lost only 11 men. That says something for Captain Carpenter and his decision. They could have been wiped out.
For his courageous decision in the Battle of Khantum, William Carpenter was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest military medal of valor. As William Carpenter proved, the story of Army football goes far beyond legends on the playing field, for it is upon other fields and other days where many an Army football player has been truly called upon to perform his best. At West Point, there are numerous reminders that America's freedom has come with a price. It is a price that the men of Army football have always been ready and willing to pay.
For all of the good things I got at West Point, one wonderful way to pay your nation back by going out there and trying to protect our way of life from any intrusion of other nations.
Monkmeyer rose from football hero to distinguished service in both World War II and Vietnam. Other Army football players who served their country well include Bill Hogue, a 1915 halfback who earned 2 Distinguished Service Crosses and 3 Silver Stars. Gar Davidson would play and coach at Army before commanding men in combat in the Second World War and Korea. Charles Gabriel rose from the playing field to Air Force Chief of Staff by flying fighter combat over the skies of Korea and Vietnam. Some men of Army football never returned from war. They include 2-time All-American Paul Bunker, an Army center in 1902, who later fought courageously at Corregidor, only to die in the brutal Bataan Death March. World War II also claimed the lives of Bill Gillis, the 1940 Army captain, and Tom Clifford, a letterman at center, who earned 2 Distinguished Service Crosses for bravery in the Philippines. Both Tom Lombardo and John Trent were Army captains who would never return from the rugged fighting in Korea's Pusan perimeter. In Arlington National Cemetery, however, there lies the grave of one man whose courage truly personifies Army football's ideal of leadership. Typically, Don Hollider's story of sacrifice began on the football field. As a talented receiver in 1954, Don Hollider earned All-America honors. But when Red Blake was short of quarterbacks in 1955, he asked Hollider to switch positions and give up All-American glory for the good of his team.
Well, the people on the post, the cadets, the officers, they thought it was a rather foolish move and the press said it was Blake's folly. And it seemed to be that way. He was a left-hander who passed underhanded, so actually he wasn't a good passer at all. But he was a leader.
Led by Hollader, Army miraculously rolled up 5 victories in 1955 before heading down to Philadelphia to face Navy in the one game that ultimately decides the success or failure of any Army season.
I remember saying to the squad, I want to tell you it would be the longest walk of my coaching career if I were to walk all the way over after the game and congratulate the Navy coach on winning. With that, there was a pause, and finally a lone voice spoke up. And he said, Colonel, you're not going to take that walk tomorrow. That was Hollander.
On that day, Hollader never completed a single pass, but he provided driving leadership. Army overcame an early deficit and stormed back to a 14-6 victory in one of the most emotional Army-Navy contests of all time.
Good fellows are a dime a dozen, but an aggressive leader is priceless. Certainly, Hollander proved that axiom that Navy day, the 14-6 infantry charge that the Army had.
11 years later, Cadet Hollader had become Major Hollader and found himself entering into a battlefield situation in Vietnam that also required sacrifice and leadership. In October 1967, Hollader was flying in support of the 1st Infantry Division Black Lions Brigade that engaged the Viet Cong some 40 miles north of Saigon. The brigade had been seriously hit and was in the process of retreating out of the battle-scarred jungle. James Shelton heard the battle over the radio.
The way I can best put it together was that Don flew over this open area and looked down in his helicopter, and he saw a bunch of wounded men just on the fringe of the jungle. They were trying to make it back to safety. He went in and landed the chopper that he was in a friendly location, maybe 200 or 300 yards away from where he had seen these wounded men. And according to reports, he started hollering, "Hey, there's wounded out there, let's go get them. You, get a machete. You, Doc," talking to a medic, "come on with me, follow me, we gotta go get those guys." Several people said, "Don't go, they're snipers," and he didn't pay any attention to them.
Despite the danger, Hollader bravely led a few men back toward the jungle in an effort to find the wounded he had seen from the chopper.
I guess there were about a squad of us, 8 or 9 guys, and we started back up the stream bed towards back into the jungle, and automatic weapons fire opened up from the tree line and cut the major down. When I got to the major, he was dead. We got all of our wounded out before nightfall that day. We got all of our dead out the next morning. We got them all.
Although he had been in the battle less than 5 minutes, Don Hollader left a deep impression on one of the last men to see him alive.
The charisma of a man that would risk his life to save other men. It's just something that happened almost 22 years ago. In my mind, it happened yesterday. A piece of him will be with me the rest of my life. And I'll just never forget him.
Today, Donald Walter Hollader lies at rest in Arlington National Cemetery. But his spirit endures. Just outside of Michie Stadium stands the Hollader Center for Sports and Recreation. Situated as it is next to the stadium where he once starred, it stands as a fitting tribute to Don Hollader and to all the men of Army football who upon other fields and other days served their country with honor.
What we want to do here now is a little tradition that we have.
Right before the end of the last practice, he gathers the whole team together, and he has the seniors stand aside from the rest of the team, and he goes down the line and gives a few comments about each individual, each senior on the team.
And so all of these men have contributed a great deal to our football program. We're going to miss them, but we're also going to finish up with a victory over Navy so that they can go out, so that our team can finish the season the way we want to, as a championship football team, one playing at its best, one with the intensity and the toughness that all great football teams have.
Then the other three classes, they form like a cordon or two extremely long lines, and we go down the line and we shake all of our teammates' hands.
John? Okay, ready to go. Mike? Okay, Bill. Ready to go, sir. John?
Leaves disappear and the college football season draws to a close, we look towards excellence. Excellence of character exhibited in the most American of all rivalries, the Army-Navy game. Welcome to the 89th renewal of the Army-Navy Classic, the greatest rivalry in all of sports.
Accomplished all the goals you set out to accomplish, and the big one was today, 3 straight over Navy. That doesn't come very often. All right, here we go. You say rah, you say
In his final speech at West Point, Douglas MacArthur said, "For me, the twilight is here. But in the evening of my memory, I always come back to West Point." It is a sentiment deeply shared by the men of Army football.
The perseverance, the determination, and the camaraderie that I experienced as a team player for West Point will never be out of my soul.
How proud I am? Very proud. I feel honored to have the A. It compares with any DSC or DSM. I have 3 DSCs and 4 DSMs from higher headquarters, and it compares with them.
This is my most prized possession of all, beyond a shadow of a doubt. It was after the Army-Navy game in 1937. We had beaten the Navy 6-0, and the captain presented me with this ball, and I broke down like I'm going to do now. This is my most prized possession that I own.
I think any of us who went through the process, any of us that felt the flame of that furnace came away altered in the way we go about living our lives. And some part of it is the belief that you're doing it not only for personal glory, but to do it because it's your responsibility. It's part of being a member of the Corps, and I think each of us that have been kind of felt that magic feel that we're, especially privileged to have done so.